All right, hello again, guys. And today we are going to talk about how can I tell if the settlement offer for my accident case is fair. Welcome to another segment, an informative segment of Tuesdays with Mitch. And I'm your host, Mel McCoyip, and I have recently joined the team of Proner and Proner. And every Tuesday we sit down live with the expert himself, Mr. Mitch Proner, a personal injury attorney with over 30 years of experience to answer your questions or any fun topics that you might find useful in the personal injury world. Now, Mitch, I forgot to plug that the last time we talked, so I apologize.
No worries.
So yes, welcome, Mitch, and thank you again for taking your time. Now, Mitch, I know this is not it's too broad of a question, but is there any way you can probably summarize this question?
Okay, so people always want to know, what's my case worth?
Right.
And a lot of times attorneys will be very vague regarding this answer, won't give a clear answer, or in the alternative, because they want to get a case at the beginning, will say, you got a case that's worth millions of dollars or a lot of money, just because they want to get the case. And then when it gets down to the nitty gritty, the offer could be considerably lower than the person that suffered injuries expected. And they want to know why. Or in the alternative, somebody could be watching a lot of ads on TV, and you see these different firms put out, there was no money offered for my case, and I got $10 million. Ha, ha, ha. Okay. So, first of all, I'll get into number one, why attorneys may give a vague answer. Number two, why the value might not be what you think it is. And number three, I'll talk about those ads on TV with the big numbers that people see. So first of all, an attorney may give a vague answer initially because when an incident where somebody sustains injuries immediately occurs, and maybe they're in the hospital, or maybe they just got home, or maybe they never even went to a doctor, they just got neck and back, and they're wondering, should I go to a doctor? What's his worth? So, first of all, if you're in the hospital, how long are you going to be in the hospital? What's your recovery going to be like? Are you going to need further treatment? Are you going to need a surgery? Many times the doctor can't tell you all the answers. They can say, we're hoping you'll make a full recovery. Well, what does that mean? What is a full recovery from those injuries? What does that look like? Are you going to be pain-free for the rest of your life? Is this something that's going to hurt you for the rest of your life, but you'll be able to get back to work? Everybody's seen career-ending injuries to athletes. Other times, an athlete can get a surgery, they miss a year, and then they're back playing the next year. And then sometimes, even though they came back the next year, they're prone to injuries and their career shortened. So the effects of an injury might not be initially known. And that can affect the value of a claim. Claims typically are evaluated by past medical expenses and future medical expenses, past loss of earnings and future loss of earnings, and pain and suffering, including the loss of quality of life. And sometimes within the first weeks or months after an accident, you might not have answers to all those questions. That's one reason why an attorney might give a vague answer. A second reason might be, while you might hear from your client how the injuries occurred, there might be another version. There might be video. A lot of times I'll find video and I'll show it to my client and they're genuinely surprised. They say, oh my goodness, I didn't remember it happening that way. And they have to reevaluate what happened based on the physical proof that they didn't even know existed. Now, sometimes they find it's much more in their favor than they realized. Other times, it might not be as favorable. Now, I'm under no obligation to share all the evidence, but some evidence I'm ethically not supposed to hide, and I don't do anything unethical because it's not really that much an interest to my client, because typically whatever comes out in the wash comes out. And I don't want to be surprised. And I don't want to look bad in front of a jury, because that's not going to be good for my client's claim. And the insurance carriers, they've got investigators and lawyers too.
Right.
So that's one. Now, the second reason that an attorney might give you a big number, you come with a low number later, is it could be a bait and switch, where some attorneys are willing to say anything just to get a client. Fortunately, I'm successful enough. I don't have to do that. I don't have to lie to my clients for any reason. And I never have. Even when I was starting out, I thought, I'm an honest guy, and my talent and hard work is going to get my clients what they need without lying to anybody. And fortunately, I've been successful with that. And my clients have enjoyed that success, having an attorney that, when I say I'm talented, maybe it's all hard work, but I've been recognized as an attorney that has a talent, which is why I've lectured all across, literally across the United States and in Canada and Europe, about how to handle cases. And people think that I have a talented approach. I was elected president of the New York State Academy of Trial Lawyers, which is the largest state trial bar in the country. And I think people realize that I have talents that I bring to the.
Yeah.
I can't change everything.
Right.
And nor do you want an attorney that's going to try and pretend he can. And I don't do bait and switch. The third thing is those commercials that you see. I got $1 million. If you look at the subtitles, they say paid actor, because typically the client they had is not like, the client might be, might have been really hurt to get that kind of payout. Yeah. Mel, you're saying something. I can't hear you. Are you on mute? I think you are.
All right, there. Can you hear me? I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interject here, but one thing I will say, like, even upon first meeting you, Mitch is exactly right. You'll see different people who are actors, paid actors, but honestly, everyone, and this comes from here, is that the person that you see here, and here on the podcast and watch here on live, this is him. The way he's talking to us here is exactly how he talks to us in person. So just rest assured, there's that. Now with that, Mitch, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of like move forward with the next question. The next question. Now, is it true that the first offer from the insurance company is usually low?
Yes.
Okay.
That is true. That is true. There's multiple reasons for that. So, as I've said in other episodes, insurance companies are big businesses. They make their money by collecting as much as possible in premiums and paying out as little as possible in claims. They are required by law to set aside money to settle cases. When a claim is presented by the state insurance department rules to keep their license to sell insurance in the United States, every state has an insurance department, and every state requires insurance carriers to keep adequate reserves. They have to put aside enough money to settle claims. But they invest that money, which is put aside to settle claims, in their reserves. And they could make more money the longer that money is invested. So if they don't quickly liquidate their reserves, they can make money by investing the reserves. And investments are typically a long-term proposal. So if you're trying to make money immediately by buying a stock or something, and you want to take that stock and flip it, that's not an investment, that's speculation. if you think you can make money over time in the stock market, and they could put the money that they invest in reserves in the stock market or buy bonds or whatever, over time, it's expected to increase in value. That's not speculation. That's an investment, but it happens over time. So they have an incentive to keep that money sitting there that they put aside to settle claims. But if they can get it at a steep discount, then maybe they'll settle early. But they're looking for a steep discount, which is why typically that offer oftentimes is a low offer. Now, some people, of course, are going to take that low offer because they just need the money now and they want this over with. So some people will accept 10 cents on the dollar. And that's a win-win for the insurance carrier. They settled a case for 10 cents on the dollar, and they kept behind the 90% that they can reserve somewhere else and keep making money off it.
I'm not sure if I'm okay. Sorry about that. So that's really great information. Now, let's move on to the next question. That has to pertain to the original question. Like, how can I compare my offer to similar cases?
Well, it's an interesting dilemma. So it used to be attorneys would ask experienced attorneys, what's this case worth? And experienced attorneys would give them numbers. You could throw out numbers. Now, sometimes there were formulas where the amount of damages that were out-of-pocket costs, like your medical bills and your lost earnings, those are called the special damages. 10 times specials, that's what your case is worth. And, or 3 times specials, that's what your case is worth. And it's nonsense, although people believe it. It's nonsense. And then some people would say, for certain types of injuries, like, oh, broken ribs, $6,000 a rib, or $2,000 a stitch for a cut. Also nonsense, not a formula. Then if you want to get a little more sophisticated, you could do research in the appellate division. That's where awards are too high from a jury, they're inevitably appealed. And after appeal, a judge might say, based on other similar cases for this type of injury, up to this number will sustain the verdict. Above that number, the verdict is not sustainable because the jury's decision shocks the conscience. It's not fair. So what's the highest sustainable verdict for your specific injury and treatment? But even studying appellate decisions, every case is different. And somebody might think, listen, 3 herniated discs, left turn case, 3 injections. What's that worth? And somebody might throw out a number. That's 30 grand. But now, hold on a second. Let's dive a little deeper. How old is the individual? Are they 18 when your discs are expected to be in good condition? Or are they over 60 where our discs get beat up by life? Everybody's seen someone get shorter if they've lived long enough. People get shorter as they get older. And the reason that happens is in between the bones of our spinal column, there are softer discs that have a hard cartilage exterior and a softer gel-like interior called a nucleus pulposus. So think about a jelly donut. The harder exterior, the jelly-like interior. Well, if you get a blow to that, it might make a bubble in the jelly donut. That's a bulging disc. If the jelly shoots out because the donut ripped open, that's a herniated disc. Well, over time, even if they don't herniate or bulge, they can dry out. That's called a desiccated disc. And they lose height as they dry out. And that's why people get shorter. The bones don't shrink, your discs do, because they bulge, they herniate, they dry out. And then on top of that, little tooth-like projectiles could come out of them called osteophytes. That's arthritis. And all these things can cause pain. If a bulge or a herniation is pressing on your nerves, that's why people get sciatica, or one of the causes of it. So I give a simple example. Now all of a sudden I throw aging in there. Well, that could change it. Okay, 62, now what? Well, 62, was he working? What type of work were they doing? Did this herniate disc or bulging disc make them lose time from work? What were the lost earnings? So every case gets different. And even when you search the appellate division, it can change. Then, how did the incident occur? Oh, a left turn, a T-bone. Well, where was it? Was it in a 30-mile-per-hour zone? Was it on a crossing street in a 40-mile-an-hour zone? I don't even. Everything changes. What's the venue? Typically, cases in the city are worth more than cases outside the city. Not because attorneys don't want to make money outside the city, but juries traditionally offer less. But then on the other hand, you hear about big cases that go to trial and big numbers come back even in rural venues, but they're not as frequent. And then on top of that, you have to say, how far do you want to go with this? So for example, maybe there's 100,000 in coverage in my example. Now, the case is worth 100. All the injuries, everything, case worth 100. But the insurance carrier only wants to pay 65. The case worth 100. Why won't they pay 100? Because the insurance carrier says, well, let it sit. Why do I have to pay 100 now? We let it sit at 65. Well, in order to get the 100, you got to go to trial. And in order to go to trial, you got to pay a doctor. And that's 10 grand to have that doctor show up. And then you got other trial costs. You got to get some drawings from a medical legal artist. There's another 5 grand. So now it's 15 grand. So now, even if you win the 100, the costs come out of the client's share by New York ethics rules. So now, on 100, you spend 15 grand to try it. 2/3 of 100 is 66. Less 15 grand, you're left with about 50 grand. On 65,000, without spending that money for trial, you get 2/3. That's 43. So now, you got to go to trial. You might make an extra 7 grand. It could take you another year and a half. And maybe there's a risk of trial. They don't believe you that your injuries are from the accident. Maybe they think they're pre-existing. Do you want to take the 47 or the 43, or do you want to hold out for the 50? Sometimes it's a hard decision. So now,
I'm talking to you now because I was just.
Can I compare my offer to similar cases? Yeah, there's always similar cases.
So yes, no.
But your case,
Motion. Okay.
your case is it's unique. Now, the other thing is you need an attorney to guide you through all this. And an experienced attorney, they can tell you this is what I think. So for example, I had a case in Westchester County. Before the trial, they weren't offering anything. Zero. The reason they weren't offering any money is because it was a knee case. My client had 2 prior accidents with surgery on his knee, the same knee that we were claiming. And in this accident that I was representing for, he didn't even go to a doctor for a month. And then when he went to the doctor complaining about his knee, he ended up getting a surgery, didn't work, got a second surgery, ultimately gets a knee replacement. So they said all these problems are from the 2 prior accidents where he went to the hospital right away and he had surgeries. Not from this accident where he didn't even go to a doctor and have surgery. Well, so they didn't offer anything. The case went to trial. And during the trial, I thought the evidence was going in pretty well. The other side must have thought the same thing. So they offered during the trial, before verdict, first they offered $750,000, and then they offered $2.3 million. Now my client said to me, "What do you think I should do?" And I said, "I think the jury's going to come back with more." And the jury came back with $4 million. And they filed an appeal, and then during the appeal, we settled for 3.9. Now, my client obviously trusted me, but also, without my experience, there's no way in the world I would have had the courage to tell him, turn down the 2.3. I think we're going to do better, because that's a huge responsibility. It's also my client's future that I take into my hands. And it's an awesome responsibility to do that. So what's the case worth? And in that scenario, it was worth 3.9. But before we went to trial, I would have taken a lot less. So the value can change depending on the circumstances.
You know, it's great that you mentioned that, because that actually takes me to my next question for you. Like, so what are the risks of rejecting a settlement and going to trial?
Well, nobody can predict the outcome with complete accuracy. If you tried the same case with the same witnesses, the same clients, same defendants, same parties, with the same lawyers, using the same arguments in front of 50 juries, and you had each of those 50 juries of 6, that's what our juries are in civil cases in New York, 50 juries of 6, and they put them in separate rooms. And then after they all deliberate, they put their their decision on a card. And you laid out all those cards on a table. Now, you went in there and you turned over one card. Well, some of those cards you would be really happy with. And some of those cards you might be upset with. And some of those cards you might be a little unhappy with or a little happy with. But with a trial, you don't get to turn over 50 cards. You only turn over 1, and that's it. So there's a risk involved. And typically you have to live with the results of that risk that you took. Everybody would prefer a settlement, because with a settlement, you know what you're getting. But you can't always get a good settlement offer on a case for whatever reason. The facts involved, the insurance carrier looks at it differently than you do. And sometimes they don't make you an offer. So you have no choice but to go ahead or just say, no, I'm not going to get paid for everything I've been through. And typically, if you have a lawyer, sometimes the lawyers will take your case and then they'll drop it because it didn't turn out to be the case. Other times, you get a lawyer like me, I'm ready to try the cases I take. Unless I find out my client lied to me, I don't want to waste my time or my talent on liars. And sometimes clients will think that they've got a better case by lying to their lawyer. I'd appreciate if they try another firm because that's not the person I want to spend my time working for. But if my client was honest with me and I took the case, I'm prepared to try my cases. I'm a trial lawyer. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing for over 30 years. And I've had success trying cases. And that's important. And it's also important because the insurance carriers keep track. They know who's trying their cases and who's not. And with me, they know it's not a posture. It's who I am.
That's amazing because that's a perfect segue to the final question I have for you. So, can an experienced lawyer such as yourself negotiate a significantly better outcome than the initial offer?
I know from experience, yes, because as I've gotten older, it's gotten a lot easier.
Yeah.
It used to be I had to try a lot more cases because people thought that I wouldn't be prepared or they could beat me or whatever. For whatever reason, I had to try a lot more cases. And the judges were rougher on me. What are you doing asking for all that money on this case? You don't know what you're doing. You don't know where you are. Because judges would rather get a settlement too, because a settlement frees up their courtroom, whereas a trial could take 2-3 weeks. And that they're stuck just working on one case. And they probably have 1,500 cases that are assigned to them. And so they'd rather settle cases. And judges get graded on how many cases they can move to resolution. So judges, if you're a good judge, you move your caseload. If you're a bad judge, your cases just languish in your part and they don't move. Good judges move cases. So if they type their courtroom, rather than getting 6 settlements, they're not as effective a judge according to the judicial system. So judges want to get resolutions. So they might give a young lawyer a hard time or an associate at a big firm a hard time. Me, they know who I am. I'm past president of New York State Academy of Trial Lawyers. We lobby for their funding. They know who I am, and it got a lot easier. The judges, when they see me, they ask me what's going on up in Albany, if I've heard anything. They know who I am, and so when I say this is the number I need, or we got to go to trial, the judge will work to get me that number. And the carriers know if I don't get my number, I'm prepared to try the case. So it got a lot easier for me to get the numbers. But I also try to keep my numbers realistic. And if you could pay me what I could get at trial without going to trial, I'm fine. I'm good with that. And as long as my client gets fair value, I don't need to go up on appeal to show who I am. I've already done that so many times. But having had that experience, it got easier for me. I can get the numbers that I'm looking for. And so, having the right attorney makes a big difference. And if you've got an attorney that says they do divorce and they do criminal law and DWIs, and they'll also know how to handle your personal injury case, run.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, that's not because, like I said, I've lectured around the country, and I see the other attorneys that lecture around the country, and the attorneys that are really dedicated to getting the best results for their clients. They're not guys that do everything. Nobody's willing to listen to those guys about how to try a personal injury case. That's just not the guys we listen to because they have nothing to add. You really got to work hard at this to be at the top of the profession.
Well, that's fantastic information once again, Mitch. Yeah, I mean, so there you have it, folks. I mean, here's Mitch with his expertise. Now before we wrap up, I just want to ask one last question. Is there anything else you want to add on, Mitch?
Yeah, if you have to consult with us is always free and confidential.
Yeah.
And most importantly, I hope you don't need a lawyer. I hope you have good health. But if you do, get somebody that knows what they're doing, and I hope you consider us. And thank you, Mel. It's good to
Of
have
course, I'm sorry. It's good to be here. So there you have it, folks. Now, for those of you tuning in and listening, please don't forget, or watching, please don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff on YouTube. And please do follow our social media accounts. And also, as a reminder, I know Mitch already mentioned it, but it is a catchy phone number. Don't forget to contact us. The consultations are free and confidential. So please feel free again to call 1-800-321-1234. So I know I learned a lot, and I hope you learned a lot too. Thank you again, Mitch. And I guess we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Be well.
All right, take care, guys.
My name is Zach Gordon. I was on my motorcycle my way home from work on the LIE when someone in a van swerved over the double-sided line of the HOV lane and hit me, and I took a pretty gnarly tumble. I ended up fracturing a bone in my wrist. I had a concussion as well as nerve damage in my right arm, but the worst injury was probably the ruptured disc I had in my neck, which ended up requiring spine surgery. I had the disc replaced and whatnot. In that meantime, I posted about the accident, letting some friends I had on Reddit know about what happened and whatnot. And a random person, reached out to me and said I had an accident as well, and Proner and Proner really helped me out for much more minor injuries than you. So I think you'd have a good case with them. And next thing I know, I reached out to Proner and Proner and was almost immediately put in touch with Mitchell the same day. From that point forward, it was super simple. I signed the retainer, gave any medical professionals I saw my attorney's information, and I had to speak to my attorney maybe if even once a month, once every 2 months. And next thing I know, in quite literally less than a year, the case was already over with a very, very good settlement. Essentially set me up for the future, and I'm very, very grateful to Mitchell Proner and the rest of his, I suppose, employees at Proner and Proner. And I would absolutely recommend this firm to anyone that has been in a similar situation or scenario as me, or if anyone you may know. This could not have been an easier and more desirable outcome and process.